Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Perry Sinaruzzi, Director of Empower DC. We're so glad you were able to join us this evening for this briefing. We're just going to take 1 hour of your time, and you're going to get to hear from several local organizations, a highlight of what they're up to this year in pursuit of environmental justice here in the District of Columbia. We hope that it will spark an interest for you to join another effort that maybe you didn't know about. And of course, because this is a brief meeting tonight, you won't get every single detail, but it'll give you the opportunity to know who to connect with to learn more. So today we're going to hear from Campaign to Reduce Lead and Asthma, Green New Deal, NatureForward, Young Gifted and Green, and Empower DC. And just real briefly, just to remind us what we're talking about when we talk about environmental justice, the right to a safe and healthy environment for all people, but especially the people who have experienced the disproportionate harm due to racist policies and racist land use decisions that have concentrated harmful and hazardous sources of pollution into certain neighborhoods or led to less enforcement of environmental laws in Black and Brown communities. And we're going to use this term at some point tonight, cumulative impact. And of course, that's the combined effect of all of these multiple stressors, all of these multiple sources of pollution, lack of green space, all of the multiple things that are contributing to people having poor health outcomes. And just briefly, we are hosting this through the DC Environmental Justice Coalition, which is a network of groups that came together a few years ago. Empower DC serves to help convene the group, and we have a steering committee with Dr. Janet Phoenix, Rhonda Hamilton, and Tanae Lewis. And many of the folks that you'll hear from tonight are participants in the coalition. Welcome other groups to join us as well. We're fostering the space as a space for shared learning, solidarity, networking, and hopefully movement building to further environmental justice here in DC. And so today's agenda, we're going to hear from the folks that I mentioned. And again, it's just, brief high level sort of introduction to the work that they're focused on this year. I encourage you to put comments and questions in the chat. And then towards the end of the meeting, after we've heard from everybody, we will have a little bit of time for Q&A discussion. But if you can put stuff in the chat, then after folks speak, they can also respond to you there. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and move forward with our first speaker, who is Carlton Poindexter from Young, Gifted, and Green.
Thank you, Parisa, and thank you, Empower DC, for putting on this event. I have some slides, and I'll just share my screen really quickly. Can everyone see my screen? All right, perfect. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Carlton Poindexter. I'm the DC EJ organizer for Young, Gifted, and Green. Again, as Parisa pointed out, we'll just talk about briefly who we are, some of our priorities this year, and how you can potentially get involved. So we are a national nonprofit environmental justice organization. We started from the Flint water crisis. Shout out to Latricia Adams. And while we tackle a wide variety of issues regarding environmental justice, our core issue is around lead prevention, awareness, and remediation. One of the biggest things that we're promoting right now, is that our top priority, is trying to get the lead DC Council to pass a lead bill. So currently we have a petition that we encourage you all to sign, mandating that DC Council, who's been working on this lead bill for the past couple years now, finally get this bill consolidated and signed off on. And so with this petition, we're offering 3 recommendations of community outreach, making sure the community is aware of this bill and all the information that will be coming with it, feedback mechanisms, allowing them to have feedback and input as we are trying to finalize this bill. And lastly, involving local leaders. While established leaders like ourselves at these different nonprofit organizations are great, it is also a necessity to include neighbors and regular community members to make sure that they're part of this process and their voices are heard as well. A few other things related to lead is bringing awareness to DC Water's lead-free DC services, the lead service line replacement program. We're working with Lead-Free DC to have more workshops, engaging parents, youth, and educators so we can get higher rates of sign up and referrals and things of that nature so we can get this process. And having DC Council mandate this bill, we're also doing on our end work with DC Water so we can make sure we get people registered and get this program used to its full capabilities. Additionally, working on accountability for children in lead poisoning prevention. And so we're working with the Lead Poisoning Prevention Amendment Act, which at a high level is just looking at lead water sources in schools and childcare facilities. And so helping with the implementation and holding and ensuring that reporting is transparent and accessible to the community and other agencies, and that proper protocols are followed if childcare facilities are deemed to have lead in their water sources. Lead paint oversight in schools is another thing, trying to see where the government oversight is, different gaps, trying to help offer recommendations for transparency, helping to work with teachers and parents on how we should go about if lead is found in schools and impacting children. And then some of the last ones will be away from lead, but just as important, looking at indoor air quality as and advocating for the State Board of Education to include indoor air quality standards, highlighting the impact of air quality as it affects students' health as well as learning outcomes, and bringing awareness and education around that campaign. And then lastly, accountability for healthy school acts. With this, there's all these different parameters to help make schools more of a healthier place. And one of the big things we're emphasizing is the use of green cleaning products, making sure that these products are up to par, making sure there's transparency in what's being used, and trying to eliminate and minimize as much exposure to children to harmful contaminants as possible. And with that, here is our QR codes for signing up for the petition, the different initiatives that we've had set up, and as also our email. You can follow us on IG or social media, or you can email us directly if you would like to get involved.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carlton. Really appreciate that. And the next speakers are going to touch a little bit also on lead. So we'll go ahead and move to them. And then again, I want folks to put questions in the chat, but also feel free to hold them for the Q&A at the end. Tanae Lewis is our next speaker, and I'm going to pull up your slide, Tanae. Go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Parisa, and great presentation, Carlton. My name is Tanae Lewis. Good evening, everyone. I am a resident of Ward 7, a DC native, and volunteer with the campaign to reduce lead exposure and asthma. Our campaign work is in partnership with many of your organizations, or we welcome the opportunity to collaborate with anyone new here tonight. We need your support around our 2025 priorities, which we have identified here on the slide. Tonight, I'm going to speak about lead and water advocacy and the legislation priorities we want to elevate and could use your support on. In the 4 bullets under this issue, we need your support to push the council, as Carlton said, to consolidate the 2 bills and pass a mandate funding jobs and funding for lead-free water filters. And we need to ensure that this bill also includes tenant provisions. Filters are needed for every resident, but because we know funding is pretty tight and budgets have already been approved for 2025 spending, we need to demand the council to seek and replace the $10 million that was removed from the budget over the last couple of years, and prioritize the most vulnerable impacted communities receive lead-free water filters, who lives in households with children under 6 years old, and or households that receive TANF or food stamps. Our campaign has had conversations with Susan Shore with the Sierra Club's Zero Waste campaign, the Green New Deal, who you will hear from later, Oscar, and also Carlton, who you have heard from. And we are working with the Sierra Club and have had many conversations to ensure that the bottle bill return deposits program can help fund some of these lead-free filters. The council has said on many occasions they will pass a bill. However, there is no funding attached to that. So if as community organizations, we have seek and collaborated to find some solutions to provide funding, it is a great need that we demand our council to also do the same thing. We need your support to push our friends at the council and the mayor on this legislation that's been discussed and has been sitting, like Carlton mentioned earlier, more than 2 years. We also want this bill to help ensure that workforce development and training need to be included. Um, I'm sorry. The training would include lead remediation specialist workforce to train at least 50 new lead remediation specialists in new training programs, and to offer the DC Infrastructure Academy. Um, capacity is a capacity is a significant challenge to meeting these goals of removing all lead service lines by 2030 because there is a limited supply of workers to do this work. But we encourage the district to ensure that unions are brought to the table to meet those demands around workforce development. This would ensure that the loopholes are closed. I'm sorry, loopholes are closed in the district's minimum wage and sick leave laws to ensure all people working in DC are paid fair wages. I will pass this along to my other team member on the campaign, Dr. Phoenix, to go over the other two priorities that our campaign will be working on this year.
Thanks, Tanae. So I want to talk a bit about air quality and air monitoring. And, several of the folks who are participating in the DCEJ Coalition have been working on an advisory group and a set of recommendations for DOEE around air monitoring, and have been advocating for more air monitoring and better air monitoring in DC. And we feel like we're achieving a little bit of momentum on that. DOE has placed additional monitors. One of the very first monitors in Ward 8 was placed at the Bald Eagle Recreation Center a few months ago. And DOEE has committed to not only placing more of their monitors, but also assisting those of us who have kind of gotten tired of waiting for the city monitoring to fill in the gaps and really adequately reflect air quality in all of our neighborhoods, and have started to think about how to put monitors out ourselves and start gathering our own data. So we are going to get underway this spring. We've had an offer of purple air monitors and of technical assistance from two entities, one of which is the University of Maryland, Jacoby Wilson's team, and the other is Dr. Hesse from Trinity University. So we're going to be launching our air monitoring network that would extend the work that's happened in Prince George's County in Maryland and bring it right down the 295 corridor and also down the 50 corridor down New York Avenue into DC, so that we can begin to really see the impact of things like those highways and also facilities like NEP, and really, kind of map out the air quality in the district. We also want to kind of compare the maps and the data that we're going to get from the placement of these air quality monitors with health indicators. So we're going to look at children's asthma as our first indicator, and we're going to gather data from Children's National. They see most of the kids with asthma in the region, and see if we can overlay, the information about where the kids are living with asthma with what we believe we'll see, in terms of higher levels of harmful pollutants along 295 and Route 50. And that should give us enough information to really be able to make a strong case to City Council that they need to do something about traffic in DC and the impact that's having on the health of people who live along those traffic corridors. So stay tuned for that. I think we will do an official launch of the air quality monitoring network in Northeast and Southeast at our Ward 7 Town Hall meeting. That's coming up on March 8th. And I just dropped the promotional material for that meeting into the chat. We hope you'll all attend. It's going to be on Saturday, March 8th at the Dorothy Heights Memorial Library. And the content won't just focus on air quality. There'll be content on resilience, on flooding, on a number of issues, food security. So I think, and we're inviting public officials to come and participate as well. So be there or be square. In addition to, the work on air quality, we really are still pushing on housing code enforcement. I would say we haven't made as much progress there. Maybe have gone backwards. It's tough. Affordable housing, especially affordable rental housing is scarce in DC, and the landlords know it. They know that for every tenant who's, in their unit, there are 8 more waiting for that unit. And it just means they have no incentive to really maintain the properties and get rid of the mice and the roaches and fix the leaks when they happen, or get rid of the gas stoves and replace them with electric ones. So, housing is tough. And Empower DC has really broken a lot of ground on this issue and has been working on this issue for a lot longer than the campaign has. But we've, kind of want to bring our effort, to the table as well, and really try to see if we can see some improvements in housing code enforcement. The new Department of Buildings, I think we had some hope that maybe having a new agency that focused only on housing code enforcement would really move the needle. In my viewpoint, I have not really seen the progress that I had hoped to see. The other issue is that now the responsibility for doing mold inspections will probably shift from DOEE to DOB. So it's going from an agency that seemed to know what it was doing in terms of mold inspections to one that, I am increasingly growing skeptical of. So, that may not bode well for the ability, your ability to call 311 and make a housing complaint and have an inspector come out who's certified and trained in mold inspection. You do have that ability now, but with this transition, I think there's a big question mark about whether, that capacity will be maintained. And of course, the Housing Conditions Court is, it's something unique to DC. Many communities, you don't have a place where you can go and just complain only about housing conditions. But the court is overburdened. It can take 2 to 3 years before people can get their case finished and get some relief. And that's 2 to 3 years that you have to live with whatever hazardous conditions are going on that cause you to want to go to court in the first place. So, these are this is what our year is going to be, in terms of testifying for oversight hearings, testifying at budget hearings, and just really, being a thorn in the side of the relevant committees at City Council to see if they can really get something done about these things. So I'm going to not stop there because I had one more thing that I had agreed to talk about. So I'm going to take off my campaign to reduce lead exposure and asthma hat. I'm going to put a different hat on. And I'm going to speak as a member of the community advisory group for the Pepco Benning plant. And those of you who live near the plant, or those of you who've been in DC a while, know that the Pepco Benning plant has just been there kind of forever. And I grew up at 42nd and Dix. And so, the plant was kind of my neighbor. But when I was little and in middle school, I didn't really know what it meant that those smokestacks were there right across, from right across from the stadium, where the plant is. It's been there since the early 1900s. So they stopped making power there, and that's a good thing. That means that the smokestacks came down. So air pollution is not as much of an issue now for the plant, but the plant was fined by EPA 6 or 7 times over the years that it was operating because it was releasing toxic chemicals into the Anacostia River, releasing toxic chemicals into the soil and into the groundwater. And so Pepco kind of decided to get out of ahead of what might have been a Superfund kind of situation. And there was an agreement struck with the city, a consent decree, and they put $50 million into a fund and agreed to hire an environmental consulting firm and test the soil, the groundwater, and the river sediments in the Anacostia River for that segment that's adjacent to the plant, not for the whole river, but just that part that's close to the plant. So they made that agreement in 2011. And I went to a lot of community meetings that year and suggested to them that they needed a community advisory group. Suggested is probably not the best word to use, but I'll use that word. And they did. They created a community advisory group, and Bernice Miller Travis was one of the people who came and helped us make that point, that they needed a community advisory group. And so, of course, since I was one of the people who asked that they create it, they put me on it. Be careful what you ask for. It's been 12 years. I've been on that community advisory group for 12 years. It's taken them 12 years to finish the testing. So they finally finished the testing on the riverside and released a report last year. This year they released the report on the land side. They were supposed to have a community meeting last Saturday at the Department of Employment Services, and I got a notice saying that meeting had been canceled, and we have not received any notice about when the community meeting will be rescheduled. The public comment period has been extended to February 14th, but the reports are really very hard to kind of wade through. So one thing I would like to invite those of you who are participating today is to come to a meeting where we're going to try to wade through the landside report and to prepare some public comments as a group. And it would be very helpful if those of you who have an interest in the community and the impact that the plant has had on the community would come and participate in that meeting. Or if you can't come, to maybe share the information through your networks. And I'm going to put the link to that meeting in the chat. It'll be Tuesday, February 4th from 5:30 to 6:30. And so, that will happen. We'll put public comments in by February 14th, but hopefully it'll be an exercise that will help for people to better understand the remedies that Pepco is putting forward to clean up the land side. I will say that it appears that cost has been the driving factor, so they picked one of the least expensive remedies that will only clean up things for a short period of time. The long-term remedies that would be more expensive, they decided not to implement. So I am done.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Phoenix. Great information. I'm just watching the clock. So we're going to go ahead to our next speaker. And again, encourage people to put in the chat comments and questions. We're going to hear from East from Green New Deal
They want you
to Coalition. And I'm going to share slides for East. East, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Prisa, for getting everyone here, and sorry to folks that I'm here in my car. Had to do a little bit of travel this evening, but I should be on normal video for the Q&A later. I'm East Peterson Trujillo, they, them pronouns. I'm the campaign director at the Green New Deal for DC Coalition, and we can go to the next slide, which is just a little bit about who we are. Team of two, myself, and then Oscar Villalobos, who I know was mentioned earlier, is our coalition coordinator. So folks may know him as well. And then we have a handful of partners, and the 8 of those on the left serve on our steering committee, including wonderful Empower DC organizer Andrea Chapman. Next slide. So Green New Deal for DC was formed about 3 years ago to bring together organizations that want to work on Green New Deal policies. And by that, I mean pushing our DC government and our federal government to invest money into the infrastructure that we need to combat and survive the climate crisis, and to do that with support for good paying, safe union jobs, and to be creating infrastructure that our communities desperately need. So our hallmark campaign is our social housing campaign, and that is really the synthesis of those Green New Deal pieces, where we want to build housing or retrofit housing that needs that, that is running with completely energy efficient appliances, is using 100% renewable energy for the buildings themselves, but is good housing, quality housing, was built using all of our union trades and labor to provide good, well-paying jobs to our community members in DC. And then also solves this really terrible problem that we face in DC, which is a housing crisis. We saw homelessness numbers go up last year in our city. We're seeing displacement of historically Black and Brown communities as rents get higher and higher, and access to things like vouchers, rapid rehousing, emergency rental assistance gets more and more constricted. We need another tool in our toolbox, and so we are calling on our government to create a social housing agency. It'd be mixed income buildings, nobody paying more than 30% of their income towards rent, and would include community control and ownership. So that's one example of the Green New Deal policy, but we can go to the next slide as well, just for the other things that we are focused on this year. Oh, more about social housing. So these are just some of the tenets of this system as we think about it. Yeah, we can go to the next one. Thanks, Teresa. Some photos, some interest of some of the work we've been doing in the community. We'll be excited to be tabling again or presenting at the EJ Town Hall in Ward 7 and get back into talking with folks soon and being here in places like this. Our other priorities in this year are advocating for more transportation funding, making our transit more affordable and reliable. I was so excited a few years back when council made the buses free, and the mayor is not funding that. And so we know that communities and rely on public transportation to get to work, friends, jobs, community events, and we need to increase that access, and it's better for our climate and our communities. We are jumping in on some accountability for our utility companies. We all know Pepco and Washington Gas don't really operate with the safety and the health and the affordability and access to energy as their priorities. And so we want to be holding them accountable to that and to adjust transition to renewable energy for communities, workers, and us, their customers. We're also working with other folks in the EJ Coalition on lead pipe removal and advocacy for the Environmental Justice Amendment Act. So plug in with us. That's my email, our website, and we are on Instagram and much less on Twitter these days, and Blue Sky newly. Also, we'll drop our link to the website and our petition for social housing in the chat, and look forward to seeing folks at events soon.
Thank you so much, East. Okay, we're going to hear from Jamani Overby from NatureForward.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Parisa. Thank you for having me. Can I have access to share my screen?
Yes, you should have access. Do you not? I made you co-host, so you should be able to share.
Okay.
There we go.
Hey, can everybody see my screen?
Oh, yes. Sorry. I guess maybe okay. There you go. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for providing this space for us to talk about environmental justice issues. I'm Jamani Overby. I serve as the DC Conservation Advocate with NatureForward, formerly known as Audubon Naturalist Society, where we really just want people to enjoy, learn, and protect and work together to sustain nature. And in my work in DC, I do a variety of outreach and advocacy work, but today I'll focus on some of the advocacy. Of course, the outreach works hand in hand for us to get a lot of this stuff done. And I'll go to the next slide. So first I'll share a little bit more about DC's bottle bill. NatureForward in collaboration with over 20 other organizations have been fighting to get a bottle bill in DC, also known as the Recycling, Refund, and Litter Reduction Amendment Act of 2025. Some information about that, the access to the full bill is on the 3RC for DC website. And I will also send some information in the chat as well. And I think Susan will also do the same and follow up with me. It has now some updates. It has now been referred to the Business and Economic Development Committee for the next 120 days, and then it will go to Transportation and the Environment Committee. As for advocacy needs, we need people to join the campaign, continue to rally support around it. We've got a lot of media coverage since the bill's introduction 2 weeks ago by Councilmember Nadeau. Some provisions of the bill will provide free water filters, as we've been speaking a lot about the lead service replacement lines and providing water filters to families in need. So a little bit, it's in section 151 of the existing district recycling fund. So 25% of the unclaimed deposits will go to stewardship and the other 75% goes to the recycling fund. And that is where that provision can be stated for water filters to be given to residents whose lead pipe replacement has not taken place. So that is something that we will be paying attention for and advocating for within this bill. As for further outreach and needs, if you have an ANC or you are an ANC, we strongly urge you to contact your ANC to pass a resolution. As of now, 5 ANCs across the district have passed resolutions prior to the bill's introduction. And as for oversight and performance hearings, once you review the bill and you find your position, we urge that you let people know that you support a strong and equitable bottle bill, and also opportunity to thank 11 out of the 13 council members that co-introduced the bill, which is everybody except for McDuffie and Trayon White. And something to just be aware of, because there has been a historical, there's been a lot of history around the bottle bill and getting that introduced into DC. We want to be aware of polling and negative messaging that is being tested by our opponents on this bill. So just be aware of that and continue to push out the positive messaging. Of course, there are some parts about the bill that we want to focus on, just as the use of the the provisions of the bill for the unclaimed deposits, as well as making sure that there is equitable access to these return centers, but also pushing the positivity of what this means for clean water in parks in DC and just overall the DC area. And other clean water issues, NatureForward is focusing on a bunch of different issues outside of clean water, but these were some of the ones that I wanted to pinpoint. In working in collaboration with a lot of these organizations, we're all going to be kind of echoing some of the same messaging, which is really powerful when it comes to oversight and performance and hearing and having council members listen to the same thing over and over again, kind of drills it in their head. So we are asking, outside of my role with NatureForward, I'm also serving as the DC lead for the Choose Clean Waters Coalition, first ever DC work group. So we are focusing on investing and expanding the pilot for the Throne in neighborhood parks in effort to clear out the E. coli pollution in Watts Branch and Anacostia River. Expansion of the compost pilot program, and accountability for DPW and equitable collections, support for a lead-free DC campaign, as we've already heard, and ensuring that district agencies are complying with policies laid out in the Climate Commitment Act and greener government buildings, and then additional funding and agency support for Flood Smart Homes and River Start Homes programs, specifically with the stream restoration project coming to Ward 8 in the Oxen Run area, wanting to ensure that residents have access to flooding resources that the district already provides, but also it be funded. So a little more about what you can do. I put the 3 oversight performance hearings, date and times for DPW, DPR, and DOEE. Of course, a lot of this work is very intersectional, so we will need to be joining other hearings such as housing, business and economic development, but I wanted to pinpoint these 3 here. You can contact me if you have any information, if you have any questions, and feel free to follow us at Go Nature Forward on all social media platforms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Awesome work, everybody. I'm inspired. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Sabrina Rhodes, for our last speaker. And then as we have time, we'll do a little Q&A discussion. Feel free to continue to put stuff in the chat. All right, Sabrina, and I will share the slides here.
Thanks, Parisi. Thank you. Okay, so Empower DC was founded in 2003 and is involved in community organizing to advance racial, economic, and environmental justice throughout the district. In addition to the work I will talk about tonight, we are organizing with tenants to save, improve, and expand public and affordable housing and prevent displacement and eviction. We are also advancing equitable community development through involvement in planning, zoning, and efforts to shape development outcomes. Check out our website at empowerdc.org to learn more about our work. Next slide, please. So these 2 maps show how Ivy City and Brentwood bear the brunt of industrial uses. Our place-based environmental efforts are currently focused on DC neighborhoods, including Ward 5's Brentwood and Ivy City communities that are most impacted by air quality issues, overconcentration of industrial sites, and urban areas that experience higher than normal temperatures, the heat island effect. Also, communities that have been impacted by racist and discriminatory zoning and decision-making processes. Okay, and on this slide, I just want to let you all know that this is the Cromell School, and Ivy City is one of the most historic Black communities, founded in 1872. It was closed in the 70s, and it will be redeveloped, reimagined, renovated starting this year, and hopefully open up in a year and a half. Ivy City also became surrounded by industrial uses after the invention of the zoning in the 1920s. Now, one of our top priorities is to shut down NEP, and I know y'all have heard us yelling this over and over. NEP is the National Engineering Products, a company that was unjustly allowed to locate in this residential community decades ago and has been polluting our community with toxic emissions without any oversight. Our top priority is passage of the Ivy City Climate Resiliency Hub Eminent Domain Authority Act. That's a mouthful. This bill was introduced last year and will soon be reintroduced. We are seeking passage of it and the implementation will include funding in the upcoming city budget, and to take any piece site by eminent domain and convert it into a Ward 5 hub. It will have green jobs and workforce development in addition to other supports for the community in light of climate change. We will be calling on your help to get this bill passed. Please look out for an announcement soon for an outline briefing we will be holding with more in-depth information about this campaign. We are also working as part of a team to develop the first Ivy City resiliency plan to address heat and flooding in the community and develop conceptual designs to adapt land uses in a manner that supports climate resiliency in the future. We will be working with DOEE and contractors, conducting inclusive, accessible community engagement, supporting the community emergency preparedness, and also developing resilient design elements for the Lewis Grove Park and other neighborhood sites. We will also continue to organize with Brentwood residents, Justice for Brentwood, under that campaign. This community suffers from an over concentration of industrial sites and effects of the industrial pollution, such as respiratory illness, cancers, noxious odors, high levels of dust, dangerous truck traffic on residential streets, and noise pollution. And it's so bad that the residents call W Street Cancer Island. Cumulative impacts, addressing the cumulative impact of pollution sources and unjust land uses through policy change. We will be working with Councilmember Parker to reintroduce the passage of the cumulative impact legislation. We also will be advancing EJ policies through the upcoming comp plan and serving as the DC lead for the Mid-Atlantic Justice Fund supporting workforce development in impacted communities. And the info session will be February 8th. Finally, we are continuing efforts to improve air quality by working with residents to expand air monitoring and become more knowledgeable about air quality science, inform policy, and provide input into permitting decisions. Soon, we are relaunching the Air Ambassadors, which is a leadership group for residents who want to become well-informed on these issues and contribute to efforts that help inform and involve their communities in improving air quality. We are also providing training and support to communities to push back against air quality permits that are being granted and polluting our communities. And if you want to get involved in any of these initiatives, any of these campaigns, just reach out to any one of us at Empower DC or reach out to me at ivcity@empowerdc.org. Thanks.
All right, guys, we made it through. We have 10 minutes. We're going to do Q&A and discussion. Thank you for folks who've put stuff in the chat. I thank you for the interest in being an air ambassador. We'll definitely follow up with you. I did get one comment in the chat. I wanted to call attention to the upcoming development on the RFK site. And I know this intersects a lot of the different issues that we've talked about. I believe there's somebody on the call who is active in the neighborhood. John, would you like to speak real briefly about that?
Sure.
Great.
Thanks, Parisa. And since I joined late, I wasn't sure if you had talked about it, but the mayor's top priority is to build this stadium for, the billionaire owner of the Commanders. And so with that priority, the fact is that they are looking at 100 plus acres that we could use for a lot of other things. But most importantly, when we fought the freeway over at Barney Circle, there's a lot of lead contaminated soil on that site that was identified in an environmental impact statement. And that wasn't even the entire site. So that is something that when you dig up that soil, the dust and everything that is involved with that is definitely like a real issue. Costs tens of millions of dollars to remediate it, and something that we need to make sure people are paying attention to.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate that. I know there's going to be a lot more conversations happening about that. We'll do our best to stay involved, and I'm sure many people in the EJ Coalition would like to. It's what was it, 150 acres or something to that degree, and I think 20 or 30 acres would be for the stadium. So there's a huge amount of land at play for other things too, right? Housing, affordable housing, social housing, right? East and green spaces, et cetera, right, John?
Yeah, and just to let you know, like we did a map of which I can put in the chat of other stadiums around the country, and the 100 and some acres that we have is actually smaller than a lot of the new stadiums, including parking and the stadium itself. So the mayor says we can do it all, and it turns out we can't. So that's why when you hear them talk about it, it's like, oh, we can have housing, we can have this, we can have that. Look at the other sites and see that that just wasn't possible. Plus, they are looking at a price tag of between $3 and $5 billion for a domed stadium.
Well, we'll definitely host some workshops to help people get involved in that, John, as we move forward. Nina, I see your hand. You want to go ahead and unmute?
Yeah. Actually, I don't think you started the Q&A yet, have you?
No, I have. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I just want to react very quickly to this, add to the stadium. There's no reason in the world why a new stadium shouldn't be an energy hub and provide backup energy for the entire community if it goes down, and flood resources. So it could be a microgrid with battery storage, and a great deal design in the solar and the battery storage and efficiency. Anyway, and there's some very, very good models for it. So just wanted to mention that. And one thing, it's Events DC, which is the quasi-government agency that oversees these projects. It's a real boondoggle of wealthy people serving each other. And it's really time that we get, I would hope, one climate and energy person on there and one EJ person on that board. So I think that's a strategy that would have some really nice leverage. It would take several years to, exercise it, but I think we should start working on that.
Great points, Nina. Thank you so much. And Ab Jordan, I see your hand. I'd love to hear from you.
Yes. As an issue of environmental justice, I would like to see how do we get the organization to put the expansion of the Tennis and Learning Center in Oxen Run on the agenda so that we can start having some meetings or discussions about this. It will have a negative impact on the environment, and it is an environmental justice issue. So I want to say this succinctly as possible. I'd like to see what we can do to get this on the agenda as well.
Okay, thank you for bringing it to our attention. I'm happy to follow up with you and discuss, again, maybe holding a forum for discussion and getting more involved. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a few more minutes. Other comments, questions, discussion? I'm looking in the chat. And if folks are ready to go eat dinner, that's fine too. Just want to make sure we cover I do want to shout out Ward 8 Woods, who's also on the call and doing amazing work. Great work with combating illegal dumping. Did you want to say anything, Keith, briefly? I know you hadn't officially planned to do that, but if I can call you out because I'm a fan.
Thanks, Lisa. No problem. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for hosting this forum. It's been, I always learn something new every time I hop into one of these forums and meetings. Nice to be a part of this robust group of people that are really trying to energize our community in so many ways, whether it's protecting the waterways, our air, or our land. I don't have any questions. I good to see Absalom on the call. I see Nathan actually popped in as well. Hey, Nathan. I'm gonna defer to Nathan if he wants to also add a comment.
Sounds good. Hi, Nate.
Oh, I just came on. Sorry. Yeah, I just want to say, these are dark times, and it's just good to be surrounded by so many good local people who are continuing to fight the good fight.
Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it. I agree. Meg, I'd love to hear your voice. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. I was wondering if you could comment on the politics of social housing. White has made it clear that he doesn't want to start new programs that can't be funded. And I'm just wondering if there are alternative ways of thinking about funding and getting that started.
It's a great question. I don't know, East, if you want to address that directly. Of course, we might need a longer strategy session to deal with it. Go ahead, East.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak for a long time about that. I actually was just over the past 2 days in about 8 total hours of Zoom meetings. That was a grassroots social housing convening for organizations working on this across the country. And we had an entire module about financing. So I feel like I have a lot more tools even just today in thinking about this. But the reality is that we can't solve our housing crisis without an investment. And I'm hearing that narrative from Robert White, lately the chair of the Housing Committee, for folks who don't know. And I think it's unfair to the community to not invest in creating additional affordable housing, to creating high quality housing, to repairing our public housing that is in disrepair, which we know is the result of decades of purposeful neglect and racism. It's going to take money to solve our housing crisis, but we want to create a model that is sustainable. And that's one of the things that's exciting about social housing. We know it's going to take a pretty big upfront investment to construct or build or acquire and retrofit buildings to become part of social housing. But once that has happened, we think that it's possible to have a model where between having a mixed income building, nobody paying more than 30% of their rent, folks can all contribute in an equitable way to their building, but at the end of the day, cover the costs across the building. Hopefully I'm not saying that too vaguely, such that it just doesn't quite make sense, but without getting into too much detail, let me pause there and happy to continue that conversation.
Well, just noting the time, I would suggest that we definitely have a follow-up conversation, East, about social housing. And, we are part of the network and happy to lift that up and support that. Bill, I want to hear your voice before we close out.
Okay, very quickly. Hello, everyone. I'm the chair of the NAACP DC Environment and Climate Justice Committee. And I just want to raise another issue for us to follow this year. Last year, the city decided to end the DC circulator bus service. And there were several routes. There were several routes in the circulator bus network that served neighborhoods east of the river. And so there was WMATA Metro is supposed to be taking up some of the slack on those discontinued routes. And I just want to put this on everybody's radar. We're going to need to keep close track of it. And Tanae and I recently, not too long ago, attended a quarterly meeting of groups that WMATA has assembled to keep an eye on some of these issues with regard to transportation equity. And of course, they are working on electrifying the bus fleet and coming up with a reworking of the entire Metro bus network. So I just want to put this out there for everybody to keep track on, particularly those like myself who live east of the river in Ward 7, 7, and 8, because we're like the ones who are on the firing line when it comes to getting rid of services.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Bill. I just want to thank you all for spending some time with us tonight. We will continue to convene, and I know you're all doing excellent work. Let us know how we can lift that up. We host the radio show every Tuesday on WPFW. That is a platform for you all. So please let us know when you want to come on and talk about your campaigns. I want to congratulate folks on the reintroduction of the lead bill the other day, the introduction of the bottle bill. Lots of good work happening, and look forward to hopefully passage of the NEP, eminent domain, the cumulative impacts bill, and so many other things that were mentioned today. So thank you all again. Look forward to seeing you real soon. Have a good night.
Okay.